Let me know you guys can hear me. You can't? Oh, awesome. Okay, cool beans. So this is nothing too formal or anything like that. Um, I am not the type to kind of plan when I go live. It's just whenever I can really squeeze it in. So I had put a question in my stories, just a general question for you guys just to ask questions, and I was really shocked at your responses. So I'm thinking that, you guys are going to ask questions about homeschooling and starting your business and all that kind of stuff. But y'all like, hey girl, hey, what tell us more about how you doing what you're doing in Mexico. And I got so many questions about that. So I was like, okay, since most of the questions, the responses I got back were in regards to that, then I'm just gonna just kind of do a live and answer those questions. So, for any of you that do not know, and maybe this is your first time catching me live or you're new to my page or anything like that, I recently moved here to Mexico, Playa del Carmen, Mexico, probably about now 2 months ago, right? So I'm going into my third month. So July, I made my Blagzit is what they call it, exit from the U.S. Here to Mexico. So this is long term. This is not a temporary thing or anything like that. It is I've moved, right? So with that, yes, there. One of the biggest questions I kept getting was, how are the kids doing? So the kids are for the most part doing relatively well. Just like everywhere around the world, we are just affected by what's going on in with the C-19 as everywhere else, right? So Mexico has its own level of regulations and things like that as any other country that you go to. So that in itself has been a lot challenging, to say the least. Because like one of the biggest things here back in the States, it was nothing for me to like take my kids with me to go to the grocery store, to go to different places like that. And here they ain't having it. You cannot take children under the age of 12 or 14 with you, which that's pretty much my whole crew. So that means that I have to go to the grocery store solo and all that kind of stuff. For the most part, I've been using, when I don't go to the grocery store, I use Rappi, which here is like our local version of Instacart, basically. But they are way better than Instacart, I will say. Like they offer services that um, I don't think would ever happen in the States. Like the ATM services, if you guys look, I think I have that video somewhere on my page, where I talk about the process of getting cash, of like literally using the ATM service and then bringing you cash to the house. Like that in itself is just weird, right? That would never fly in the States. So it's definitely been some getting used to. Moving period is challenging and can be incredibly stressful. Moving with kids has another level of challenging, and then moving with kids as a single parent out of the country, it's just like a whole nother thing. So for the most part, we have gotten relatively acclimated going into this second month. Like I said, down the challenge has been just not been able to really take them places, right? Because of all the restrictions and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that will change somewhere in the near future. I'm one of the people, I'm hopeful. I don't allow so much of what's going on around me to affect my timeline. And when I reference my timeline, meaning my individual journey, because my experience is going to be different from the next person's experience. You've had people who have, not had good experiences moving to Mexico, right? I don't carry that energy with me. I never have. Even when I lived in the States, I just didn't. And I was living in the hood in the States. So it wasn't even like I was living in a really good environment, which played a big role as to why I made the move. Because that was another question that I had got in my stories, was why I chose Mexico. So for one, because it's still attached to the United States. So it's between that And when I was looking at countries, I was looking at that, and I was looking at Canada. Canada has a lot of restrictions as far as moving there unless you are contributing. The biggest thing is that they're wanting you to contribute to their economy, which makes, complete sense, right? Okay, cool. So they're what's I'm gonna make sure I phrase this correctly. Their process in coming there, moving there to Canada, is completely different than how it was years ago, right? It used to be relatively pretty easy for you to cross the border, move there, no problems. This is pre. This has nothing to do with COVID. This has been because of the last election, and there was this huge exit of United States citizens that were moving to the Canada, and so Canada was like, hold up, wait a minute, let's change some things, and they literally changed their policies and their procedures in that, and it was just way too challenging for me, especially with kids, to make that transition. So then I had a couple girlfriends that already lived here, um, in Mexico. And I was like, okay, cool. So I talked to them. That helped tremendously because I was able to kind of have eyes on the ground, if you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't where I had to kind of walk into it blind. Now, because of my personality, I'm a rebel at heart. So it don't take much for me to do stuff and to make what people have called drastic decisions. I just don't. I knew that I wanted to be in a safer environment for me and my kids. I wanted to be in a more comfortable environment, and I wanted to be able to comfortably take care of them, without being on welfare. You know, and there's nothing wrong with welfare, but for me, with my personal journey, um, I had been on it for so long in some way, shape, or form, right? And so this gonna be transparent, y'all. So buckle up and get ready. So I had been on it for so long, and for me, it became a chokehold. It became a hindrance for me to progress where it is that I wanted to go. Um, and I'm a real woo woo spiritual person, right? So I knew also that it was not in alignment. Okay, it was not in alignment with where it is that, um, I wanted to take, where I wanted my journey to go, right? Hopefully I'm making sense. What country are you in? I'm in Mexico. So I wanted to, there were goals and intentions that I had set for my life and was setting for myself, especially with me turning 40. I just turned 40 last year, and I made a lot of drastic moves. I don't know what it is. And if any of you have hit that 40 plus mark, then you probably understand what I'm saying. It was like a, a mini midlife crisis that I was going through late last year, y'all. It was serious. Like, I had cut off all my hair. I had I made so many drastic moves. And for me, the cutting my hair was, and I knew that was like the step to where what led me to making this drastic move. Um was I was cutting off everything that no longer served me, right? So all of the toxicity, the bad relationship with my children's father, the lack of family support, the lack of just support, the stress, everything that I could possibly think of, and I wrote it down. I was very intentional with that. It wasn't something that was just kind of just off the blue, out the blue or something like that. I was very intentional with, why am I making this decision? And I was like, I need to just cut everything off. I need to cut it all off and start brand new. So I did that. And folks around me were like, what in the hell? Because y'all, my hair, like, I got, extensions in now, but my hair was like midway down my back. So it wasn't like this was like I had just small amount of hair. Like, I cut off all my, like, first it was like in stages, and then I just went and did a big chop. And then after that, I was still kind of, I guess, doing what you call shadow work. With shadow work, it has to do with you literally facing the sides of yourself that you don't like, right? Because experiences that we have in our life are reflections of what's going on subconsciously that we're not even necessarily aware of, right? And so that's what brought me to making this decision. Okay, in order for me to heal wholly, for me, in my opinion, I needed to change my environment. I knew I could not heal in the same place that I was broken, right? And a lot of people differ on that, and that's fine. But for me, I knew I needed to make a drastic change. It was like everything around me was getting almost like you're in a room. And you, if you guys, okay, so you ever know how, like, and maybe this happened to you when you were a kid, you go to sleep, it's time to go to bed or whatever, lights out, and like it takes your eyes a minute to adjust to the room because it's so dark, right? So that's kind of what it felt like I was going through. Like it was just, everything was just kind of just closing in and closing in and closing in. Before I made the decision, the final decision to say, okay, I'm going to move to Mexico, I was going through the home buying process. So I was like, well, you know, let me make the transition, from welfare. And this, for me, the final version of welfare for me was, I was homeless for 4 years. And so the shelter that we were living in misappropriated funds. And so instead of, because it was transitional housing, so instead of them transitioning us into our own homes, they misappropriated funds. And then as a result, the shelter closed. I spoke out with a lot of other organizations during that time to prevent shelters from closing out because it was literally like a domino effect. A lot of stuff was exposed in Fulton County and all of that. And so Department of Housing stepped in and offered us moms, which was only like I think 8 or 9 of us, that were left, that like held out to the end, like you gonna give us what you promised. And so they created a program within Section 8 and offered us Section 8 vouchers. And of course, when you are transitioning, going through homelessness, that's a huge blessing, and it absolutely was. Incredibly grateful because it gave me time in that house that I was living in over a period of 7 years, y'all, to really get my life in order. I went through my ups and downs and challenges and all that kind of stuff. But what I started to realize was that the thing when you are on these different programs is that it caps you. And they don't tell you this, right? You start to put the pieces together. It caps you as far as with your income. So, for example, you would get this amount of benefits either in Medicaid, and if you're getting WIC, if you're getting food stamps, and then whatever portion they determine for you to pay in Section 8, right? Here's where it keeps you in a it keeps you in a chokehold is the only way what reference I can give to it, is that as your income increases, the benefits decrease, right? Obviously, nothing wrong with that. It's supposed to. However, it doesn't do so over a transitional time period to get you acclimated and ready for you to do this on your own without any assistance, right? It's immediate. So as soon as you report your, this new increase in income, literally within 30 days, your benefits drop. So you're always, no matter how hard you're working and you're trying, you're still always playing catch up, right? It's like you can never just get to a point where you're ahead. And for me, especially because I'm self-employed, when I even made the the notification letting them know that, hey, I'm self-employed, because I've been self-employed since August 2013. After I had lost my job, I got laid off, and I was like, okay, I wasn't going back into corporate. I'll say bump it, I'm just gonna go into this entrepreneurial thing full time. Like, I've helped many people do it for years. I've worked for plenty of people. Clearly this is something that I can do on my own. So I went through that process of letting them know that, right? Because I didn't want to deal with any kind of issues or getting kicked off and sneakiness and all that kind of stuff. I try very hard to do things that are in alignment with me, because when it's not, shit don't never go well for me. It just doesn't. Like, it doesn't. The universe has clearly shown me that over and over, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to let them know. So when you're an entrepreneur in that realm, your benefits are different. So I wasn't getting the same benefits as another mom who was going and have a traditional, going to work for someone, right? It was completely different. So the amount of benefits that I would receive were like half of what another mom would get. So that's another thing. And then as every year I report my income via my tax returns. So I would submit my tax returns every time it was time to renew, and the everything would just increase. And I'm just like, okay, hold on, what the hell? make it make sense. Like, Make it make sense. Yeah, wait till I get off, okay? So I was like, okay, okay. Have a transparent moment with yourself. Be real with yourself. What the hell is it that you want? Because you cannot say that you want wealth and be in this system. It does not. The two, they don't. It doesn't match. It will not work like that, right? You can't have one and the other. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust the universe. And I said, well, let me go through the home buying process. Let me just, jump out there, go try to purchase a home. The thing that kept me at pause with purchasing a home was that I never can own it. And let me explain what I mean by that. Is that, and my realtor, I knew I was driving her up the wall. One of the realtors I was working with, I was driving her up the wall with this because she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I go and I put all this money down for a home and I purchase my home. I go live in my home. I'm making my mortgage payments every single month, all of that, right? And then my home is paid off. But it's not really paid off. The mortgage portion of it is paid off. But life can happen, anything can happen. Now I'm paying property taxes. If I don't pay the property taxes or I miss it or something like that, the bank can still come and get my home. If I want to add on to my home, I got to get permission or I get told no. Like it was just so many different things that again I'm a free spirited person. I don't like restriction. And I felt restricted in that process. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go from one version of restriction and control to another. Like it has to be all or nothing, essentially for me. Because I'm like, well, hell, if I'm gonna do that, I might as well just rent. And that's just again my personal preference, right? Um, and I love the flexibility of being able to just pick up and go and move whenever I wanted. So I was like, okay. And then I looked around at different apartments. I was like, did away with that. Looked around at different apartments, and the rent in Atlanta was like ridiculous. I'm like, okay, because they go by the number, like they do the two heartbeat rule in Georgia, right? So it's two heartbeats um, per apartment, and they rolled this out probably about 10 years ago, because you had families that were obviously living in like studio apartments or one bed, like a whole bunch of people living in like a 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom apartment, and sometimes they would be little kids, babies, because you're doing what you got to do to survive. And so Georgia was like, we ain't doing that. Here's what y'all gonna do. So now they did the two heartbeat rule. We're literally two heartbeats. So they did that to include the 5 and under group, right? So I'm like, okay, well, it's 5 of us. Well, six of us before, if you include my oldest daughter. But she's moved out. She's on her own. So it's 5 of us, right? So myself as an adult and 4 kids. So I'm like, okay, that's, right there, minimum 3 bedroom apartment, right? So you're talking about a good, in a nice neighborhood, like just decent area, decent safe area where my kids can literally walk out the house and feel comfortable and feel safe, right? Was like 1,500, and that was still in the hood. In the areas that I felt comfortable in, we're talking about 2,000, 2,500 a month, and I'm like, get the y'all. I was like, it's we not doing that. So I was getting so frustrated, and I kept talking to different girlfriends of mine, and it was so funny. I was on the app Clubhouse, and in the room that I was in, right, in the room that I was in, Breakfast with Dry Buzz. In the room that I was in, I kept hearing this lady talk about, which has now become one of my good friends here, y'all, talk about her living in Mexico. And I'm just like, because in my mind, moving abroad, like you gotta have money, like money, like stacks on stacks on stacks of money, like. So it seemed far fetched to me. Like it just, I could not wrap my mind around, okay, how is folks doing that? Because I'm one of them people, once I get vested into something, I go down a rabbit hole and I start researching my ass off. So I'm like researching. I'm like, what in the hell? So the biggest thing that I realized was the conversion of the currency. So that's the biggest thing. In Mexico, your money goes much further here. So, for example, the 3 bedroom home that I'm in now, which is almost 1.5 times bigger than what I was in Atlanta, is $550 a month in comparison to the 900 of what my apartment was, my townhome was in Atlanta, right? That's number one. So the cost of living is way cheaper than it is in the States. Number two, and the reason being is because every $1 converts to 20 pesos, right? Which is like $20 here. So that's like, and I'm like, okay, okay. Um, so that alone was like, wait a minute, hold up, for real? And in a nice neighborhood, in a gated community, like I'm in a gated community, and I'm talking about not like Atlanta gated where the gates don't work, and not Atlanta gated where it's like there for show, but people can still kind of come and go as they please. No, it's guarded, gated. You not coming through here unless you have already told them at the gate, hey, I'm expecting such and such to come to my door. They don't care if it's Amazon. They don't give a damn if it's UPF, if it's DHL. They don't give a damn if it's your girlfriend that they just seen 2 or 3 days ago. They don't care. It is strictly enforced. So for me, when I'm looking at my housing and all of that, I'm always looking for one, security. First and foremost, I have to be secure. Two, comfort, and then convenience. Literally in that order. It's non-negotiable. So for me, I got 2 out of 3. Thing over here. I got 2 out of 3. I got security and I got comfort for the most part. The kids are able to go, and there's a pool like a few doors down. They're able to go in the pool. And it's a mixed community. So it's a mixed community of expats, right? So American citizens and their families, and Mexicans with their families, right? So it's a nice blended community. And I will say for that, I am incredibly thankful that I was able to find this, because the community that I'm even in, it is very hard to find homes over here to rent, because people typically will get them and they don't move, right? Which, I mean, who the hell would, like, at that rate? Like, I remember in Georgia, my first apartment being right about $600 a month, and that was a 2 bedroom. And that was, you're talking about 97, 98, right? Cost of living is not nowhere near like that. And I didn't like the feeling of, when I did express that and try to talk to people about it, was like, oh, well, you just need to increase your income to 6 figures. You just need to hurry and get to 6 figures. And I'm like, so I got to continue to work the hell out of myself into damn near an early grave, put my health at risk, not be completely there for my children the way that I want to. So many different things that comes with that. No, there's got to be a better way. So that was the thing here as far as the cost of living, and that pretty much sold me. Once I figured that out, that sold me. Now, I did not pick my apartment before I left. I was tempted to, because they'll show you, if you go on like Facebook Marketplace, they'll show you different apartments and condos and things that you can rent, and you're tempted to, because it's like, oh, that looks so good. But I had heard horror stories, and you want to, and I will say this, you definitely want to come here in person and give yourself time to look around. What state are you in down there? I'm in Quintana Roo. Quintana Roo. So I am in the same state as Cancun. And what am I below? Yucatan, and then right below me is Belize. So we're literally right on the border of Belize. And then after that is Guatemala, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, I believe. And like it goes further on. So yeah, so that was, that, even just thinking that, to know that you're connected to countries like that is like insane. So I was like, okay, I came down here. When I came down here, I had booked a hotel ahead of time. So I knew I was going to stay at the hotel for 2 weeks. And that gave me time just to kind of breathe and get acclimated. It was on the tourist side, because I still needed to feel, no matter what, it's, home is home, right? And I can't just cut off what I was born into and what I know. So I still needed that comfort of feeling like there's a piece of American ways and isms, so to speak, and all of that. So that first 2 weeks was great. I will admit, the first week, y'all, I was an emotional wreck. I'm not gonna even lie. Like Jasmine, I gotta get her turn light. I'm too comfortable in the bed. I can't move right now. And then she gonna be like, "Really, mama?" Um, I was an emotional wreck, y'all. Like it was so like I was excited, I was thankful, but I was like going through so many different emotions because the language, barrier for one definitely got me that first week. Because I was like, I took Spanish in high school. Like, it shouldn't be that bad. Shit. Y'all, no. Because what I realized very quickly is that they will treat you completely differently here when you know. Turn on that light for me, please. Thank you. You can move that, yeah. And then this one too. Yeah. So they no, that's okay. That's fine. That one's good. So they will treat you completely different if you don't if they know that you don't at least know conversational Spanish, right? So everything will be much higher and all of that. So I picked up on that really, really quick, but I didn't realize how much of the language barrier it was going to. It challenged me. It challenged the hell out of me. It challenged me because let me tell y'all, if you ever seen like the TikTok or the memes, what you thought and what you got, like I came here a little too naive. Like I had in my mind, I'm gonna like find me a beachfront home, and we're gonna be like parading on the beach every day and sipping margaritas. Well, me sipping margaritas, and the kids gonna be playing and this and that and all. Now, that's what I'm working towards, and I will say I am much closer to my ultimate dream, right? My long term dream than I was for damn sure in the States. So I'm only 10 minutes away from the beach, which is great, right? Because that was one of the biggest things. I'm from California originally, and I love the water. And I'm not talking about in Atlanta, they love to put some damn lakes together and bring in some sand and call it a beach. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like be real, the ocean, like to see and to be engulfed in that much water and to see God's work, the universe. Like it's an undeniable feeling, and it's such a peace and a comfort that I have with it, and I know that's something that I needed to get back to. The beachfront property has not happened yet though, because number one, I ain't gonna lie, I was a little too like I could have afforded to, because the rents over there were pretty much between like 1,000 and 1,200 for like a 2-bedroom apartment, and that's literally having a view of the ocean and different views of the city and all that kind of stuff. But I did not want to be at the top end of my budget. I wanted to get more comfortable and acclimated to the country, to the city where I'm living in. See how I can migrate, see if I even liked it. And I have mixed feelings about the city, about where I'm at, right? Because it's still very touristy. It's still very touristy, and there's good things and bad things about that. So like of course, definitely when you move to a country and you stay in the tourist area, that keeps you in a bubble, and it makes it very difficult for you to truly experience what the country has to offer, right? To really get acclimated to the culture, to the people, and to engage, right? Because that kind of defeats the purpose of, in my opinion, of moving and making a move like that if you're going to stay in a bubble. So I knew that I wanted to be immersed in the culture. I did not realize when I moved on what they consider the other side of the highway. So how Playa is set up, how Quintana Roo essentially is set up, is that you have literally a main highway, a major highway that kind of goes, if you think of east, west, or even north, south, depending on how you're looking at it, that splits the sides. So on one side is the tourist area, is what they call it, right? So it's where a lot more stuff is catered to American tourists, American, expats who want to stay in that community and all of that. And then you have the other side of the highway, which is where I live, which is definitely 90% locals, right? Your Mexican locals. And over here, they not trying to speak English to you. Like, you gonna learn the Spanish. So I will say I'm grateful for that, because for the most part, I have learned more Spanish, I will say, in the 2 months that I've been here than the damn 2 years that I spent in that classroom in high school. I will say. I will say that. And then they don't even teach you to write Spanish on that. So I was kind of pissed about that. And they will correct you. So that's a good thing. Once the locals kind of see that you are making an effort and that you're trying to conversate with them in their native language, that definitely helps you see the difference in how they approach you and how they deal with you, transactions, taking taxis, the whole nine. Like, I've definitely seen a complete difference with that. Now, to back up a little, when I was talking about I needed security, comfort, and convenience, the convenience I don't have over here as opposed to when I was on the other side of the highway. Because shortly after we moved over here, the C-19 regulations, because I moved here in the middle of an election, which I didn't realize. And so the new government that came in is a lot more stricter than the government that was here before. And so right now there is even still a battle that's kind of going on with that. But that put a regulation on the taxis, meaning that you can only have, for them, 3, maybe 4 passengers can be in a taxi. It's 5 of us. So that has been incredibly challenging because that means that I've had to kind of curate. Shout out to the folks that live here who have helped me try to find taxi cab drivers who are cool with transporting, me and 4 kids, 5 of us total, and all of that, and who will not charge me, crazy amount of money. Because the only other thing is that you can't purchase you can purchase a car, but you can't register it here if you're not a resident. So you can't do that on a tourist. Now you can rent a car, but that's a whole different expense. And for me, I definitely wanted to keep my budget as low as possible until I got used to paying the rent, until I got used to paying my utilities and all that. Now I will say, I am grateful that when the house that I was living in Atlanta, thankfully I was paying rent and utilities. So I was already acclimated and used to doing that. So here I pay rent, $5.50, gas, which is probably about $20 US dollars. It converts like $20 US dollars, maybe, right? 20, 30 at the most. Electricity is $100. The last bill I just paid was $100 for the month, which is I cried at the electric place, y'all. I'm not gonna lie, because in Atlanta I was paying $300 minimum per month in electricity. $300, like, no joke. So it was crazy as hell to me that I was paying $100 in electricity, like, for this big of a home. I was like, damn, okay, that's crazy. The internet is $30 a month. What else? Water is $10. And I'm doing this in US dollars, so 10 US dollars. So essentially, of course, my bills are like all my housing bills, right? So my housing living bills are like right at 1,000 or less, right? And that's, food, and my biggest expense is food. Go figure, right? That has not changed. And the reason that this is my biggest expense is because we do eat a lot of fresh foods and vegetables, and so that was a challenge for us, believe it or not, because when you're grocery shopping in the States, we do grocery hauls, right? Like, we go to the grocery store and we shop for like 2 weeks. They don't do that shit here. Like, you go grocery shopping every couple days. You only buy just enough for literally 2 or 3 days, 3 days at the max. And that's because everything here is fresh. So they don't do it's completely different. Like, and that threw me for an entire loop. Why was Georgia Power doing you like that? So Georgia Power's off the chain. So, and I complained about Georgia Power so much, and I just gave up. Like, year 3 of me living there, I gave up, because what they kept trying to validate it was based on the grid that I was living in. So basically, you're saying I'm living in a very black place. I'm living in the hood, and y'all charging us more. That's essentially what it boiled down to. Because literally, when I lived in Dunwoody, or when I lived in Gwinnett, when I've lived in Marietta, my electricity was never nowhere. Maybe the max was like $150, right? So we pretty much knew, and it's just one of the things you just get acclimated to. It is what it is. And there's nothing that you can do about it, because when you're kind of pigeon-toed in those environments, unless you move, there's not another option, right? It's just Georgia Power. It's not like internet where you can kind of change internet providers. Well, hell, you can't do that no more anyway, really, because Xfinity has got that on lock. So back in the day, you used to, like when I was first, in my entering into adulthood in the late '90s, early 2000s, boy, it was sweet. I feel for these children and these teenagers, college students coming out and getting on their own, because it's a completely different world full of restrictions that we just didn't have. Getting going on my own. I just, me and then the older generations before me did not have. Like we had our, of course you have your set of challenges, but it's nowhere near like it is now. Even here, getting an apartment, getting a home, they don't have a credit system, so it's not like they do credit like a renter background check and all that kind of stuff. It's literally, do you have the money? Can you pay? They wanted to see, of course, your passport. Some landlords will ask for bank statements just to verify and make sure that you have income regularly coming in. Mine was one of them. They're an older couple. So I understood that, because I have heard over the last couple of years that a lot of the landlords here have gotten burned by people, because they're at, many expats who come here, they kind of come through, right? So life will happen. They'll be here 1 month and gone the next, but they signed a lease. And because Mexico does not have regulation as far as in like the States, there's no court system. Like you can up and just leave. It's it is what it is. For me, that's bad karma. Like even if you're not necessarily judged or receiving a what you call it, receiving a court order in the court, in the laws of the land, it's just a effed up thing to do, right? It's just leave someone high and dry. So I understood that, but the process of getting into here took literally a couple days. It was the easiest process of renting a home that I have ever experienced. It was just insane to me. So that part has been relatively great. I will say. What else? I'm trying to think of any other questions I got, because that was a big one. Was how's the kids were doing. I am homeschooling. So we start our homeschooling because someone asked me that. Yes, I am still homeschooling, which that made one of the biggest benefits of being able to relocate, was because I'm not having to worry about them being in virtual school and all that kind of stuff. So I am still homeschooling. So for the most part, our homeschooling journey has not really changed. It's just our location has. Now we are going back to more structure because last school year we tried more of an unschooling method, just because of the way the world was going. I was like, well, I'm going to try unschooling, because it just wasn't a good school year last year. Honestly, I'm not going to even lie. It just wasn't. It was not. And so we tried unschooling. We can't do that. That doesn't work for my family unit, right? It just don't. I know some mamas that can rock it and they do unschooling, and I'm like, how you do that? My children, they need structure. So we're definitely gonna go back to, and when I say structure, meaning as far as the time blocks, and I'll share that with you guys as we get closer to, because we always start back school the first Tuesday after Labor Day. I'm old school like that, so we always go back in September. So we still got like another week or two, like almost 2 weeks before we start back homeschooling. But it will definitely be more back to our time blocks and how we were doing that, just so the kids know exactly what they're doing in their time blocks. Because that had worked well for us for years. We tried something different, it didn't work, and that's the joy of homeschooling, is that you're able to make those decisions and changes. Hey, something don't work, try something else. So we're going to go back to that. I have a rising or ninth grader, so my oldest is going into high school. So this is so exciting, because for her, and she'll be my first official high schooler that I'll be homeschooling, because y'all know my oldest daughter, I homeschooled her up to 8th grade, and then she decided she wanted the whole the whole high school experience in public school. So I transitioned her back into public school for high school. So this will be my first time homeschooling a high schooler. So I'm a little nervous, honestly, but we're gonna see, and y'all gonna be here for the whole ride of it and see how I do it. I will be reporting back my experiences, what I've learned, what worked for me, what didn't work. For the most part, my intentions and my goals are to focus on life skills training. So it is to get her prepared to live on her own, right? So I am thankful for the last 3 years of this transition that I've had with my oldest daughter. Because that's a whole, baby, that's a whole, I was about to say scope, periscope, y'all. That's a whole different video, live. Making that transition from a child, parent-child relationship to a parent-adult-child relationship. Whew, I wasn't ready. And I'm going to have several drinks on that before we had that conversation. But with her, definitely, I'm focusing on life skills training for her. So, and I'm dividing that up over the course of 4 years. So, different things that we'll be focusing on, which will essentially all lead her to feeling extremely confident and very well prepared to live on her own, especially in the world that we are living in. Teaching her life skills and survival skills. It was critical before. It was important before, and now it's critical. So that's what her homeschooling will definitely be more composed of. How hard is it to purchase your curriculum materials down there? So I don't purchase curriculum materials for the most part. I do 90. I'm a techie, so y'all know I do a lot of my stuff online anyway. So I will still be using Time for Learning and Discovery K-12. I do have books that I brought with me that I've just had over the years, so I have that. But and that was so weird, y'all, was downsizing. So along my homeschooling journey, I've downsized from having my first year or two, year one and year two, I had a homeschool room. So I was one of the Pinterest moms. I was like, I have to have a classroom. Had a classroom. Then year 3 through 6, which was year 3 through 6, we changed that and was kind of like all over the house. So different spaces in the house, different corners, all that kind of stuff. This last 2 years, we did the downstairs dining room in my old house. And so now we're kind of back into the dining room and the kitchen. So we're going to try that out and see how that goes. I will be sharing in the coming weeks, next week or two. They have Homeschool Bins. So each of them have a bin with all of their folder, notebooks, and different kind of thing that pertains specifically to them. And so literally every morning they would just get their homeschool bin and go. And so I'll still be using, Time for Learning. Ooh, sorry, y'all. Time for Learning, Discovery K-12, and keeping it all organized, and Homeschool Manager. So that's how I'll be doing that. I have a senior and a freshman this school year in our homeschool. It's not as hard as you think. It just takes planning. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the planning. And I'm a planner. So I'm almost done planning what I want to go over with her for the entire school year, because I knew that hers was going to be a little bit more challenging. And if I know that I have at least the whole school year planned out, I'm good to go. I'm like the little ones, I'm good on that. I feel like an expert in this thing now. So with them, I'm cool. Baby girl is officially potty trained. Thank you, Jesus. So that helps us being able to do a little bit more stuff outside and not having to, find places to change her and all that kind of stuff, right? So I will definitely, my hope is to be able to incorporate definitely a lot more field trips and things like that, kind of like what we were doing before, because our homeschool was really built on bringing their learning to life. So like this Saturday, we're supposed to go to the C Notes here. So hopefully all goes well with that. And so that's kind of like because I always try to do like some kind of field trip to start off the school year. And so the kids are allowed to go there. So I'm hoping everything goes well with that. I will be filming to show you guys what that looks like. So I'm super excited about that. And that way that'll kick off the school year for them. First year of homeschooling, and I love Time for Learning. Yes, Time for Learning is bae. Time for Learning is awesome. Between them, yeah. So the C Notes is where we're going to go see this weekend, and they are probably 30 minutes away from me. So yeah, and I keep hearing about it. I keep hearing about it. So pyramids and the sea notes are about 30 minutes both ways, depending on which one you, because we're surrounded by them, right? Because we are sitting on what Mexico is a vortex. So, and that's a whole different conversation. But for the woo woo in me, when I tell you manifesting here, you got to be careful what you ask for and what you are wishing on and all that kind of stuff, because, baby, things move very quickly here than they do anywhere else I've ever lived before. Someone asked me, did I have regrets about moving? No. I had no regrets. At the end of the day, it's my journey, right? So I knew that I needed to make a change to better my life for my children and then for me. Um, and I needed a healthier environment, and I just could not find that. Definitely not in Georgia. I've never been a fan of Georgia at all. So that leads me to the next question I had got, which was, am I coming back to the States? Um, at some point, yes, possibly. Most likely, yeah, possibly. I don't know. I keep going back and forth with that. We'll see. Would I ever move back to Georgia? Hell no. um, but I don't know what other state I would choose to move to. I don't know. I don't know. That is literally one of those things that's up in the air. I have no clue. I don't know. I know for me, when I chose to make this jump, because I jumped because I made the decision to move to Mexico in March of this year. No, the end of February. End of February of this year, I bought my tickets the end of March. Um, my plane tickets the end of March, and I started. No, I take that back. I made my decision in February to move. I started the passport process in March. In April, once the passport started coming in, then I bought my plane tickets. When I bought my plane tickets, I knew it was no turning back. It just was no turning back. Um, and from there on, I'm just open to embracing being a digital nomad and living a nomadic lifestyle. I will say, definitely, when you are embarking on this lifestyle, because I've had a lot of you ask me that, being minimalistic is key. And that's difficult when you have children and you're a single parent. Like, I downsized from a 3-bedroom home that I had lived in for 7 years to 11 pieces of luggage. No joke. And there are still moments where I feel very much I miss my stuff. Because here they're minimalist, right? So when you move into the homes, it's not like what we're used to in the States. You don't have all this, storage and closets and countertops. I mean not countertops, cabinets and all. It ain't. It ain't like that. It is very much minimal. They were forced to be minimalistic, because they're big. It's big. They're big on experiences. It's like, experiences. You're going. You come home and you rest for a moment, and then you're out and about. And as an introvert in a homebody like myself, that has been very difficult for me to wrap my head around. I'm like, I need some damn storage. So I will say that, I still have my Americanized ways. That's not going to go away. I like what I like. And that kind of goes into that comfort bucket for me. So those are some things that I still struggle with, as far as with, the way things are done here in Mexico as opposed to in the States. It's a challenge. And when I tell you that your mindset has to be on point, it has to be on point. Like when you are embarking and making a move out the country, especially when you're doing so as a solo parent, because it's just you, and it's like my kids depending on me to keep it together and to tell them, what we're doing, how we're going to navigate, where we're eating, where we're living, all that kind of stuff. But I'm a planner, so of course I planned everything out as much as I possibly could. And then I think for me, the navigating the city and the taxi, the language, the food, all these different changes that you're not accustomed to and not used to, it takes a toll on you, here and there, if you, and it can really take a toll. I mean, I have known moms who have moved here in the course of me being here, and after a few weeks they're like, I can't. And I've turned right back around, went back to the States. um so yeah, that's the, it's just, it's a different way of living, and you have to be open to a different way of living. I will say, definitely living here, um you're not gonna, the rushing that I was doing before, that shit, it's no, you're not gonna rush them to do nothing. You're not gonna rush through nothing. Like, it don't work like that. So it calms you, it changes your perspective, it shifts your perspective about a lot of things. um yeah. So I mean, and all of that has been transparently what my experience has been for the past couple of months. um there are moments, I'm not gonna lie, when I'm like, what the hell did you do? We about to turn back around and go back to the United States of America, because this is some bull. And in those moments, I have to calm myself. I have to ask myself, what's triggering me? And this is where, if you think, if I thought I was doing shadow work before, I've done shadow work times 10 here. Because different things arise in you, from fears to self-doubt, um, anxiety, all those different things come up. And so you have to then go, and if you choose to, and for me that's important, for me to actually, hey Dr. Tachi, for me it's important to actually figure out, why am I being triggered, why is this upsetting me, why am I responding this way, why am I upset. I ask myself literally a series, I keep them in my journal over here. And every time that I'm feeling a challenge and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I ask myself those series of questions, and then I keep asking why. Like, after I write down the answer, then I ask why. I write down the answer to that, I ask why. Literally until I get to the root of what it is. And when I get to the root of what it is, sometimes it be shit that I'm just like, it be stuff that's like so deeply embedded in your subconscious that you don't even realize, right? So a lot for me, definitely when I was in the housing search, in that week of looking for places, I was triggered in so many different ways, because I wasn't liking the places that I was looking at. Like, I'm like, okay, we got to be out this hotel by, a certain date, and this is like, 4 days before we got to leave, and I'm still haven't found a place. So for me, I was having little mini meltdowns, and I had to realize that was triggering when I was homeless. And I had to tell myself, remind myself and tell myself, you're not in the same position, and this is not the same situation, as what forced that situation, right? Because that situation was forced by, losing a job, running out of unemployment, literally just not having money. And that wasn't the case this go round. So I've had to work through all of those different challenges in the midst of, this move, and in the midst of trying to still keep a sane head while taking care of my children at the same time, and still working, and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely, I tell people, who have asked me about moving here, and it's not just about moving here. It doesn't matter where you move, because I know a lot of moms who have made the move and who live in Belize, and who live, like, I talked to a mom, she moved to Spain with her and her 2 kids, probably they've been there 2 weeks now. And that's like, whoo, shoot. But, and for most, and really for most of us, it's the freedom. It's that ultimate freedom. It's that ultimate of just letting go of everything that no longer serve you, and wanting to truly live a life of freedom. Which is why I have not, like, made the decision as far as, okay, I'm going to be planted here in Playa, and this is just going to be it. We're definitely going to explore the country and kind of see, different parts, and see where we want to be at, essentially. And what's going to work well for us eventually. So yeah, but it wasn't a lighthearted decision, but it was a quick jump. But it wasn't like there wasn't things that led up to why I moved, because I had a lot of people that were like, because I made the announcement, and people were like, what? You moved to Mexico? And the other number one question I would get was, what about the cartel? Trust and believe they don't want me. It's no different than, yes, they are here, um, present, all that, but it's no different than the gangs that I saw in Atlanta that were present and around in your face. That's not my world. It wasn't my world there. That's not my world here. I don't interact or engage in anything that has to do with that. So that's, again, that's not on my timeline. So when people question me with that, I'm like, what the hell do you think I'm doing? What kind of life do you think I'm living? Living down here. Um, and then I realized too, a lot of times when I would get the questions from people, they hadn't even left Georgia. So then I had to disregard those conversations, because that's the thing. I will say, if you decide to make this move, don't tell a lot of people. I did not. I told a handful of people. Literally, I can count on one hand the number of people that knew. Um, and then towards the end, probably the last few weeks, I told more and more people. Um, but you don't need the opinions of everybody on the decision that you feel like you need to make for you and your family, and what's best for you and your family, because at the end of the day, you know what's best for you and your family. um so yeah, so no, I don't regret my decision. I have my challenges just like everybody else, but for the most part I am very much happy with the decision. I still feel kind of in awe sometimes, but I will say definitely when you make that, I think just traveling outside of the country and just having a different, it gives you a different view, it gives you a different perspective. It literally does change your life if you allow it to. If you allow it to. If you open yourself up to trying to really just see things from a different perspective. It has definitely done that for me. For sure. This has been one of the most life changing things I've ever done in my life. So in that regard alone, it's not a regret, right? Is it a challenge? Hell yeah. But your girl is here for it. I am here for it. So, in comparison to what my life was this time last year, I'm incredibly thankful. Like I'm in a safe environment. I'm in a healthy environment. My kids, I can, in the community that I live in, which is really freaky. Um, like it's well lit even at nighttime, so it's hard to sometimes know when it's daylight and when it's not, because it's well lit. And the kids come out, and I guess because of, and I'm starting to learn because of the weather. It's hot as hell in Mexico. I will tell you that. So that packing, that wearing long sleeves and pants and all that kind of shit, you don't need that. My feelings was hurt when I moved here, and I had all of these beautiful, nice jumpsuits that I had bought from Amazon ahead of time, and shirt. They're all literally in the other room in a bin, because it's literally that hot. Like you step outside and you want to come back in and take a shower. So a lot of times the kids probably after 8 o'clock come out and play. So it's definitely one of those communities where everybody looks out. Um, there's no crime. They don't play that. That's a big thing here. And even talking to the locals, they are big on that. Um, with not women and children. So the kids literally be outside playing, and it's one of those things where it kind of gives you the feel of, or at least for me, of going and visiting my grandmother when I was a child, and you just being able to be a child and go out and play, and the grown folks don't have to like literally just sit there and be right beside you. Like you can literally, I can sit here in the house and look at them from my bedroom and just watch them play, and it's no problem. I don't have to worry about the worries that I had before, where they were not able to go out and play because people was always shooting and it was always madness and craziness. Um, so yeah, just those different things have definitely been. I hold on to those things in those moments where I'm doubting myself, in those moments where um, I get a little bit of anxiety and all that kind of stuff. I remember, what life was like just a few months ago and what I was dealing with and all that kind of stuff. Do you speak Spanish? Conversationally, Jenny. Conversationally, honey. Not as fluent as now. My goal is definitely by this time next year, we have got to be fluent. Because I will say, like I said before, is that I definitely feel that makes your experience so much better. And I think that you get to really truly experience a place when you know the language, obviously, right? I didn't want to be in a bubble. I did not want to be in a bubble. So, and the bubble didn't do it. I knew being keeping myself in a bubble, I wasn't going to grow, and I needed to grow, right? And I wanted to have different experiences, and I want to be able to travel throughout the country and not need Google Translate. So for the most part, I'm doing a lot better than I thought I would, and you pick it up. Definitely, that's why I say, as far as with the conversationally, you pick it up as far as I make it a point of repeating a lot of the same things that I say all the time. I do the same thing with the kids, so a lot of things that they say all the time, I have them constantly repeat it. They are not as the boys are my youngest boys are not as excited about learning a different language, but they're understanding the necessity. And I'm like, in order for you guys to go participate in different activities and camps and things like that with the locals, you have to learn the language. Because the thing about it is that when you're living here, I can easily let them participate in a lot of tourist stuff. But the tourist stuff comes with tourist prices. And we are not tourists. We live here. So having to get them to understand, mama don't have a tourist budget. So we not doing what you see everybody else doing, right? Who are only here for, a couple of weeks and then they go home. This is our home. This is where we live. So getting them to, get that. And so that will be a big part of their curriculum, obviously, this homeschool year. There is a teacher, she's an expat who lives here in the community, and she's bilingual. And that's what she does for a living, is she teaches Spanish. So I'm like, what? She teaches Spanish and English. So I'm super excited about connecting with her, and so she'll be helping as far as doing the tutoring with them, as far as teaching them Spanish. And then for me, I've been using different online programs and things like that. So yeah, so that's a requirement for them. Let's see. Jenny said, "I'll teach you some things." Thank you, T. I speak fluid with these kids. I know, right? It's the kids. So y'all, now I will do this to them. So like even when they're downstairs and they're watching TV, I on purpose turn on the TV to the Spanish channels, like the Spanish cartoon. They be like, seriously, mom, can you put on, like, I got a Fire Stick. The Fire Stick works well here, so that's something to think about. The Fire Stick works here. What I was not prepared for, which people kept telling me, but I just, in my mind, I was like, well, no, that's not, no, like, I can be able to watch what I want to watch. So Hulu does not work here at all. So my feelings was really hurt because I'm like, y'all, I've had Hulu for like years. Netflix works well here, but you don't have the same access to TV shows in the States that you do here. So of course you can do VPNs and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the VPNs work and sometimes they don't. It's really just hit or miss. And it's like, how they feeling? Somebody asked me about phones. So WhatsApp, that's what I use for phones. For the most part, I have no need for my U.S. account, my U.S. telephone number anymore. I just don't. So this month coming up, I won't be having my T-Mobile. I will just strictly be doing Telcel. It's either Telcel or Telmex that's here. That's here in Mexico for cell service. So like for them, cell service is like a couple hundred pesos, which in terms is like $10, $10 US a month for cell phone service, as opposed to me paying $100 through T-Mobile, which 90% of the time it don't work. So I'll be making that transition over for that. Again, just trying to keep the more that you keep your bills and you pay as a local, the better it goes. The better it you're definitely able to live more comfortably, for sure. So even though it may be, now don't get me wrong, it may be expensive for them, right? If they're local and they're not accustomed to that, but it's not expensive for you as an expat coming here and you're converting your money over from US dollars to pesos. It's completely different. So it's definitely a different comfort level And like I said, it definitely sliced my bills more than in half of what I was paying when I was in the States. So that alone has been like confirmed that I made the right decision. How is it being African American for you down there? Is that a factor? So I will say it's been interesting because for a few for a few reasons. And I laugh because I've had this conversation offline with girlfriends, and I literally just had this conversation with someone yesterday. Okay, go tell Jasmine. Go let Jasmine know. It's okay. Okay, don't worry. No, go give it to her. So I will say a few things. I feel like a speck, like literally. I stand out like a sore thumb over on this side of the highway. There's not a lot of us. I will say that was probably one of the challenges I had when I moved here was that I based a lot of things off of the Facebook groups. And in my mind, there was going to be this huge black expat community that was going to like welcome me with open arms, and we're gonna like kumbaya it up, and you know, we're doing business moves and we're homeschooling our kids, and we no. So there are pockets of expat communities, um but the mentality is just different for different people, right? So my mentality is not on the partying and the going out and all that kind of stuff. Like that's just not where I'm literally in a wealth building, long term wealth building mindset right now. That is like that's all I'm like laser focused on that. Building a foundation, setting roots for my children, right? And of course, in the midst of that, there's time for play, but that's not my primary goal. So beyond that, there's not that community that I was hoping for, and I'm not the only one that feels that way. A lot of us who that I have been able to meet over the past few weeks, who have moved here, were looking for that same thing, and so now we are having to try to curate that, you know, of like-minded individuals and all that kind of stuff. So the other thing is that just because you leave a country does not necessarily mean that you leave the mindset behind. So, for example, going into the store, I'm a happy-go-lucky person. Y'all, I love to laugh. I'm goofy. I'm silly. Like, that's my personality. It always has been. I am definitely one. And it's so funny being from California. But I guess because, for the most part, I was raised in the South. And I'm big on when you see people, you speak, say hey, conversate, all of that. Like, that's just who I am. And I'm not going to change that for nobody. But here, I will say, like, when you see, you know, another black person, you just like, of course, you know, hey, yeah, you get a little excited. Or at least I do. You get a little excited. And so, literally, you know, it's been like, especially for the women, they will literally look you straight dead in your face and kind of give you a look like, are you talking to me? And won't speak. Some of them will, some of them will not. Um, Almost kind of like, you know, what are you doing here? So it's been mixed. It's been different. It's definitely has, like I said, has not been what I was hoping that it was going to be. Another person asked me about homeschool communities. So homeschool communities here are also spread out. There's not a big homeschooling push or community here as far as among the locals. Expats there are, but again, it's more hubs, it's cliques, right? So different, you know, different cliques. Definitely not on the side that I'm on, but definitely on the tourist side there are. And then in the Yucatan state, which is the city there, Merida, has a huge homeschool community. But the reason I didn't choose to move to Merida, and why I wouldn't move to Merida, is it's kind of like living in the suburbs, right, of a place. I didn't want to live in the suburbs, far away from, like, you're 3 hours away from the beach. So I definitely did that. Defeated the purpose for me to move here. I didn't want to do that. And it's a very heavily regulated state by the government. And I didn't want to deal with that either. So those are the two things where I'm like, I can't move. I won't move to Merida. Mexico City, which is on the west coast of Mexico, also has a huge business and homeschool community. But it's like living in Mexico City is like living in, what's a good example, like New York or LA. So super super busy, and all of that hustle and bustle, going at like that whole nine. And the energy there is great, but still not what I'm wanting. So I think for me, working beyond the at times feeling lonely is, definitely having social media. Like it has helped tremendously, right? To stay connected, and that's pretty much how I've been able to even connect with a lot of other moms who are here, have been through like the Facebook groups and things like that. So now we are just now trying to, get get our schedules together to come together more and do more things in person, all that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely working with some other moms here to create what we're looking for. It's like one of those things, if you don't see it, create it. I wasn't trying to that I really didn't want to have to do that. But I also know the importance of having a village. You cannot do this. I don't recommend doing this journey alone. Not that you can't. I just don't recommend doing a journey, definitely as a single parent by yourself. You will tend to go stir crazy after a while. Just because I love my children to pieces, but I also need adult interactions, and to have adult conversations, and they need to be able to have interactions with their peers, their age, and all that kind of stuff. So we've definitely even experienced that cabin fever a little bit, just being up under each other because of C-19. And we've been up under each other since March of last year, like inseparable, 24/7. So now we're starting to kind of meet, different people. And like my daughter, she's met a couple girls her age. Thank God. So that has helped her tremendously. Little kids, they can play with anybody. So definitely my younger kids have, kids here that they play with and all of that. And so that kind of just leaves me. So that's the only thing with the community that I live in. I am the only African American person over here. In the other part, because the way this community is built, it's in 4 different sections. So in the section that I'm in, which is a pretty big section, I'm the only African American over here, which is weird. Which is weird. I didn't realize it, until which you don't. I mean, you can't until you move into a place to really understand and know, right? So that's been interesting. So that's been just weird, because you definitely want to still have people that you can identify with, right? And that's just a comfort level, I think, for anybody. So on the other communities, it's not a big African American community at all. So we're kind of spread out for the most part. Definitely, you see it more when you go, of course, inward toward the tourist side. You see a lot more of us. And then when you go to like Cancun and all that kind of stuff, Tulum, let's see, Puerto Morelos, yeah, any of those other cities along the coastline, you definitely see a lot more of us. But just not where I'm at too much. So yeah, so that's what that is. I think that was pretty much. Hold on, I got a question in here. Are you in the United States? No, I'm not. He said I'm confused. No, so I moved to Mexico, probably about 2 months ago. So I had posed a question, for those of you that are just coming on. I had posed a question inside of my Instagram story, for you guys to ask me questions, right? And just to see where people are, their minds are at, and all that kind of stuff for going into the fourth quarter of the year in regards to business and homeschool. But 90% of the questions, the responses were based on my move here to Mexico, and people were asking questions about that. So that's what, instead of me answering everybody individually, I decided just to come on and do a live to answer, all those questions. Yes, change the audio to Spanish. Yeah. So after it's, it works well here and there. So there are some days where it's like the kids are like, cool with it, and then after a while they're like, okay, mama, can you the turn on the fire stick? Now I will say the only thing that I don't like is that the the cable here in Mexico, just the Mexican cable, right? They don't have the captions, and I've noticed that with a lot of places as I've traveled about and stuff, is that in comparison to the states where is very accommodating as far as if you have a different language, if you speak a different language, definitely specifically Spanish, right, where you see the translation in different things. That's not like that here. It's very few places that do it. Like some restaurants that you go to, more so definitely on the tourist side, where they'll have their menu will be in Spanish at the top and then English at the bottom. Um, for the most part, once you come outside of that tour zone, everything is 90% Spanish. And then of course you find people who speak English. They don't come right out and speak English. Um, and so yeah, so that's the only thing. They don't have the caption. That's what I was saying. As far as the cable, it doesn't have the caption availability to translate into English. So that's been kind of like a downer as far as watching TV or the news or anything like that in Spanish, is that it doesn't translate to English. So like for me watching the news, I have to watch it via YouTube, where I can be able to turn on the translation to see and kind of get acclimated and know what's going on around me and all that kind of stuff. Because like I said, they're just finished up an election, and then there's so many different regulations and things that are happening, and as you guys know, is happening all over the world. Is that things are changing every day. So definitely trying to stay on top of what that looks like and all of that. So hoping and praying that that does not impact us as far as being here and all that kind of stuff, which I don't foresee it based on a lot of the conversations that I've had with the locals here. So it's just a matter of just kind of riding out what's going on. So yeah, so that was all the questions, y'all. And all that good stuff. So I'm hoping I answered everybody's questions. I don't see any more that have come on and all of that. So let me just scroll back through to make sure. Mm-mm-mm. Nope, 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 nope. Okay, cool. All right, cool beans. So until next time, you guys, I will chat with y'all later. Bye.